Hi guys, welcome back to this channel and welcome to this video. We are officially in week 2 of what's been going on the Holy Land. Let's just call it that. And I wanted to share different perspectives on this and just different psychic insight as well. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and share what I got when I was reading on this entire situation. Because I do feel, once again, if you have different perspectives and angles from which you can view them, it helps in kind of seeing the bigger picture of this. And I do think there are for sure different angles to this entire matter. First and foremost, I do want to say anything you see on the media, anything you most likely see on these overhyped accounts on social media too, I would just take that all with a grain of salt. I wouldn't even really believe that. There is so much footage that I've seen floating around in these past almost 2 weeks that was actually footage from the years before, from 2021 and even before that. And I do want to say that this has been ongoing. This is not just something that literally came out of the blue, maybe for the Western world, but if you've been following this for a longer time, absolutely not. And I personally just came back from Cyprus, which is right next to this entire thing. It's 45 minutes air flights from Israel, actually. And in the beginning, there were some Israelis that were seeking refugee there. So that was about 1.5 weeks ago. But when I was in Cyprus, every day, every single day, like there was always something going on. There was always some report of, oh, this happened in this section, this happened in West Bank, this happened in Gaza, these people attacked each other today. Like, it was like literally every single day, and you could almost not get a break from this. So for me personally, just having been there like 2 weeks before all of this exploded, you could already feel something was going to happen, let's put it that way. And also when I was there in February, just my own personal impression of being in Israel and being in Jordan and being in all of these places that where the conflict is literally ongoing right now, you could feel it. You could feel the tension. And I remember being in Israel, being specifically in Jerusalem in mid-February of this year. And I was like, wow, this is just not going to last for too long. Like, people can't live like this. This entire tension that you feel, military everywhere, this is just not going to go too well. And so this, for example, is an image where you see like the military right here. This is Israeli forces. Here you see the Arab population. This is Old City Jerusalem. And I also want to say, before I dive into my own psychic insight, everything the media wants you to believe about them hating each other, it's not true. Okay, so everything's overhyped. And I know right now it's very hard to believe because you have all these other Arab nations literally hating on Israel, and then all these other Israeli proponents hating on everything else. But actually, when I was in Jerusalem this year, I was walking around, I was talking to both Arabs and Jews, and I was trying to inquire and trying to ask, so what's really the relationship you guys have to each other and this and that. I didn't go to Gaza. I went to West Bank, but I did not go to Gaza. However, it is part of this entire what's going on. It's the same area. And I do have to say that when talking to them and just seeing how they're interacting, yes, you had this very, very tense military presence, which I personally disliked, but I do understand it to a certain degree. You had them just randomly searching Arab boys, mostly teenagers, by the way. So I think I took this video footage, and you can see it when you look at my Jerusalem video from a few months ago, where they were just randomly searching this boy, like the pockets of this boy, and then let him go. But it wasn't like they were doing it in a threatening way. It was more like a random, just searching random people. And so when I was talking to specifically Arabs, the impression I got was just that everyone's working together somehow, So Arabs were actually working in Tel Aviv. They were working in all these different places. The ones I interviewed, they were working mostly in restaurants. So what you have to envision is, because it's a Jewish country, at least Israel, all places are kind of closed on Shabbat, which is Friday, up until Saturday night. And then also you have a bunch of Jewish holidays, such as the one where the attack happened. And for all those things, like a few times every week, and especially during these huge holidays, the Jews can't do much. They can't drive a car. They can't use electricity. They can't do any of this, at least the very Orthodox ones, the Hasidic Jews, all of that, which you do find in Jerusalem. And for all of this, for this to even work somehow and to function, you actually need Arabs because they need to be able to drive the buses. Like most of the bus drivers were Arabs, were Muslims. They need to work this and here and whatever, you know, especially like in the restaurant industry. I'm sure they had other jobs too, but I did not encounter the hate that I expected to encounter, especially when you listen to the media and it's always like, oh, hate here, hate there. Absolutely not. And I was positively surprised by that because it really showed how human people are and how it is possible to live together, even in this area, with all these different backgrounds, belief systems, and all of that going on. And I know right now people are probably not going to believe that. You know, what I have to say to that is it's very hard if you haven't been to this area physically. Like you can read on this a million times, you can remote view it a million times, but if you actually have not been to this area physically, it's going to be very hard for you to tap into anything of that energetically because the energy here is so different and it's so potent. And it's called the Holy Land for a reason. Let's put it that way. And, you know, I'm not coming from a religious standpoint at all. I'm not religious myself, as you guys know, but there is a reason to this entire conflict and why it's exploding, which we'll go into in this video podcast as well. So first and foremost, I was reading on, and this is like a few days ago, what's really going on in Israel and Palestine. And the first word that came through was setup. Everything's just a setup. So nothing's really the way it appears, you know. It's also the same old. So this has been going on for a very long time, for like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, for a very, very long time, just in different variations. And a lot of you may have missed all the things that were going on in 2021. And I think 2022 maybe wasn't as bad, but definitely in 2023, we had the tensions going up again. So for me personally, when I was following this in 2021, right after the pandemic or right still in the pandemic, it seemed everyone kind of got this breather through 2020. And then 2021 and on, all these attacks again, you know, like people just fighting each other or these random attacks happening on both sides. I did get the word genocide. I do want to say that. Also mass destruction. And what I kind of saw with mass destruction is pretty much what I think their plan is, to destroy every single building and everything, to kind of destroy that entire area, to use it for their own agenda. The little man fighting each other while the politicians actually agree. Like I can barely even look at all these pictures of these politicians shaking hands while their entire country, you know, like how Blinken is shaking the Israeli president's hand, which, by the way, people have been protesting against this Israeli president for the past 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years because he's so horrible, right? And just want to point that out too. Like there were protests the moment I left Israel, literally a week or two after, the protests were all over Jerusalem. And that's kind of also how I knew which Jerusalem at this point is the capital, right? It's not Tel Aviv anymore. Tel Aviv used to be. So I knew the moment like those protests started picking up in March that something big is going to happen later on in the year, because you can't have a country unstable like that for no reason. Like it's being made unstable, and protests are a huge sign that something is unstable or people are dissatisfied. Let's put it that way. Everyone's being fooled. There's an underground war being played out in the open right now. And so this entire thing that we're seeing, it was kind of simmering in the underground. Media did not want to report on this. Unless you're right next to it, like you're somewhere in Syria and Lebanon, in Cyprus, whatever, the media won't report on it. And so when I was in Cyprus, the media was reporting all day long about this Israel thing. And this is 2 weeks before the attacks happened. There was always some news every single morning. I woke up to this new something, you know, I didn't even want to see it anymore, but it's plastered all over the newspapers, all over the newspaper stands when you walk past them. So when you're right there, it's really in your face. When you're here somewhere in the US, or you're in Germany, or you're in Australia, or wherever you are, South Africa, South America, it's easy to be ignored, but this has been going on for a very long time. And then I asked, what is Hamas? Hamas seems to be an underground organization causing pain. Definitely the warriors, the fighters that we see, but especially pain to the children. Like I literally had this image, and also I almost heard it, of this child screaming when I tried to read on this organization. It is funded from both sides, and the words pain and destruction came through. So it being funded on both sides, I think I also got something with the US in all of that, because I do think the US is funding all of this in the underground somehow, you know. I mean, there are like all these theories how Hamas was having weapons from the US and everything. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past it at all. And then when I tapped into this today, I mean, we obviously know the US has been really involved into this at this point. You know, they're having the troops land there and everything. What I saw was just like all these other troops on ground, such as the US and also others, meaning now more things are getting involved, right? It's not just about Israel, Palestine, it's about way more countries getting involved. And I think that was also the main agenda of whoever agreed to pull this off right now in October, which October does seem to be the month of destruction in a form or another. So the Israel-Palestine conflict, is it a spiritual war, is what I asked. It's taken out on a spiritual land, but none of these parties are spiritual. A lot of anger, grief, sadness came through. So this has nothing really to do with spirituality and religion. So there's also another thing, because my one friend was posting all about, oh, this is all about a religious war, which I'll answer in a few moments too. What's going to be like, you know, the long term, or like more like the short term, and what's going to be the outcome of this conflict? So it does appear to be a prolonged war to weaken and derail the parties involved. It's going to stall, it's going to pick up again, it's going to stall, it's going to pick up again, it's going to stall, pick up again. You know, kind of what we're seeing. Okay, Israel wanted to attack Palestine. They had this flood come in, they couldn't do it, and now all these countries are against them attacking Palestine. And then see, it's stalling, it's picking up again, it's stalling, it's picking up again, and then the water supply was cut off. Now it's not cut off. You know, those kind of thing. All of this, it's just all of this tactic to really weaken and derail everyone. What I kind of got, and I do want to say, I got two timelines with this entire thing. So first of all, I got a timeline of February. And what I kind of got with that is that perhaps the media coverage is going to go that long, or it's going to simmer away and then pick up again in February. So this is in regards to people reporting on this. So I do think similar to what we're seeing with Ukraine, Russia, where for the first month or the first 6 weeks, everything was reported, everyone was outraged, everyone was taking sides and this and that. We're seeing that right now too. And I do think this conflict is different from that conflict, but I think it's going to be in a similar way, because right now we're almost 2 years into that conflict. We're a good 1.5 years or longer into that conflict in Ukraine. Everyone's forgotten about it, right? And people are still passing away, they're still fighting, they're still doing all these things. So I think it's going to be similar with this, where you're going to have media coverage here and there, and then eventually it's just going to go away, or it's not going to be as intense as it is right now. However, I also got that this is also perhaps like a distraction technique. So we have to see what else is going on in the world right now, you know? Like here in the US, there are certain things that are happening, especially immigration-wise. You had Trump in the courthouse, you had all those things. So there are things happening maybe also in your country that you have to pay attention to, because it seems like a huge distraction technique from other things going on too. Is this war still about the hostages? No, it was never about the hostages. So whatever's occurring now, and I got the feeling the moment this happened, yeah, of course it's unfortunate the way it happened. Absolutely, don't get me wrong. But the moment this happened, I was like, this is not about these drugged up people attending a music fest. You know, this is like, because the music fest they attended had similar vibes to like the Burning Man, and you already know my opinion on Burning Man and everything. So what I got was no one really cares about that festival. In a way, yes and no, of course, people care. But this was really about bringing the conflict up to the surface for the entire world to see and to involve as many parties, possibly countries, as possible. It's a lot of possibilities. I just noticed that. Possible, possible, possible. And then I asked, what about the kibbutz or the kibbutzes that were affected? So that does seem to be madness and an unwarranted attack, causing more hurt and pain, madness, revenge, viciousness. I asked, will this madness ever stop? Yes, in a way, but it's also going to be ongoing. So I feel in a sense it's just going to be, I mean, yeah, it's not going to be over tomorrow. Let's put it that way. When will it be safe to visit Israel again? And what I got was in 2024, potentially. And once again, these are timelines, but potentially around April or later. And what's happening in April is going to be Easter, Passover. You have Orthodox Easter in May. And then you also have Ramadan around March, I think, next year. I think it's a bit earlier than it was the year before. So all of that is usually around the same. By the way, all these religions always coincide in their huge holidays. Easter, Ramadan, and Passover usually tend to be around the exact same time. Ramadan is a month-long thing for people who didn't know, and Passover can be quite long too. Easter, depending on the country who celebrates it. Obviously, here in the US, it's only one day. In some areas, it's a week or longer. So yeah, it can be a huge thing. So with these timelines, I think we're gonna see different things in 2024, let's put it that way. But it doesn't appear it's gonna be over like anytime soonish. And what's the purpose of involving as many countries as possible? To weaken their resources and spirits, which I've personally found the word spirits meaning, the spirit, the soul, the spirits therein. That's the most important part because everything that's being reported right now, it's an energetic war. It's a spiritual war, right? And the spiritual war is really getting to your psyche, which is your soul, to keep them distracted from their own issues as well. That's kind of like the purpose of involving as many powerful countries as possible. And this is a question I really have because it made me a little bit upset. And I did talk about it to an Egyptian friend too. But for me, I was just asking, why is Egypt not helping? So it appears Egypt doesn't have resources. They're in their own pain and issues. And what I got was kind of like no one really wants to help. They would rather just attack each other energetically or online. So right now, I do think it's imperative to stay away from all of that. I'm not saying pick a side, do this, don't pick sides, whatever. You can do whatever you want. But you need to be aware that as soon as something's posted, like the amount of laughing emojis I see on both posts or people just really going at each other for one belief system and another, it's pure insanity. It's worse than it's ever been before. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse from 2020 on because people have nothing better to do than posting their entire opinions and lives and ideals online because obviously everything has kind of been put online, right? Like our entire life has been uploaded online into this entire AI reality that they want to create. So no one really like all these, I have friends from all aspects. I have Arab friends. I have 2 Palestinian friends. I have Israeli friends. I understand every single aspect of this. At least I think I do, or I understand all these different perspectives. And what I do have to say is a lot of these other Arab nations, like Moroccans, Tunisians, possibly Egyptians too, they always like to be like, oh yeah, so yeah, this is genocide, this is this and that and whatever. And sure, okay, that might be the agenda behind it, but you're not helping. Okay, like Egypt's not opening up the border. And why aren't they not opening up the border? Oh, because they want Palestine to defend themselves against Israel so that they don't lose that thing. And I'm like, if you really were so concerned about 7+ million people being genocided, you would help them. But the reason that you're not helping them, I mean, shows more that what it's really about is you don't really want to get involved in that sense. Okay. And that can be upsetting to a certain degree as well, to realize that people like to just watch from afar and add their opinion to things. But at the end of the day, no one's really doing much in that way. Is this a religious war? No. And so this is the main thing that some people maybe not understand, because they're like, oh, it's between Jews and Muslims. It's not between Jews and Muslims. Absolutely not. Go to Malaysia. There are 3 different religions that are living together peacefully. And one is Christianity, one is Islam, and the other one, I forgot, is some Indian religion that I have to look up again. But this is really not a religious war. This goes deep back to the history of the land. And this is also bloodlines fighting each other. So Hamas meaning, what I got was somehow a soul trap. Now, I do want to say, if you reverse Hamas, it's Sama. And Sama can mean different things. It can, so this is in Islam and Arabic. Sama can mean generosity, but it can also mean, if you spell it Samaa without the H, it means the sky. And how did these attacks start? Supposedly through the sky, right? You had all these paragliders come down onto the music festival goers and everything, at least with this specific attack. So not the attacks that were before, like the years before. So I found that interesting. And that it can if you reverse everything, you know, which you kind of have to at this point. I know Hamas is an abbreviation for a longer word or several words together, but they're using this, and they're using this to program people. And if you reverse all of this, similar to how you can reverse every single word out there, by the way, this is what it could possibly mean. I also got soul trap. What about the energy of the land? What makes it so powerful? Now, this is interesting because I hadn't gotten this before. It's the navel of the world somehow, abundant and free. Everything was created here. And then the enslavement happened. So this is thousands of years ago, not right now. Everything was created, and then the Philistines took over, which the Philistines is where the Palestinians got their name from. I'm not saying they're one and the same, just like the Israelites are not the same Jewish people you see there right now. But if you look at the energy of the land, this is what you have to take into consideration. And is that part of the world really the land of milk and honey? It used to be. It also used to be very abundant, but now there's a lot of pain. What about the attacks onto Beirut, Lebanon, and Syria? So they are being carried out. It's not 100% sure who they're being carried out by, okay? And it does seem to be a distraction. This war is really not about what most people think it is. So I think it's just overly emphasizing this over and over and over again. It's not what the media wants you to believe it is, first of all. There's an energetic component to it. And so I want to briefly go into the Philistines and just what's happening, how they got their name. So the Philistines are ancient people. They're a tribe who lived on the south coast of Canaan or Canaan. Canaan is basically Israel right now, okay? What you see in this map is Cyprus and Crete as well, which Cyprus was a powerful, powerful land, a powerful energy. I want to talk about that in another video. You see Medinat Habu, which I have a video on that when I visited it in Egypt, and back in February, March of this year. And you have all these different names. I don't think I have Canaan here. Want to address this map too. Let's just address this map real quick, because people seem to be quite confused by it, and it's only like a quarter truth. So supposedly they're saying Palestine used to be a country. Palestine never used to be a country. It used to be a territory. And that's a huge difference. Okay. I'm not saying they don't deserve to not be there or anything. It's just people need to understand that this conflict is not coming out of nowhere. So I'm just going to read a comment in regards to this map. This is a map of the British partition plan of their mandate over the Protectorate of Palestine, which was formed in 1922. The Protectorate was not formed based on the historical divides that immediately preceded this Protectorate, which is the Ottoman Empire. And if you want to go into this entire conflict and then why every single Middle Eastern country was divided and split and whatever, the Ottoman Empire And also the British, by the way, play a huge role in this. And the British are also the ones that completely changed the culture in Egypt, that kind of put India, Pakistan, that kind of mushed everything up over there too. So there's a lot that goes into why the world is the way it is now, because all these things have just been so changed and switched up. And this area is a perfect example of that as well. Um, so historical divides that immediately preceded this protectorate, but on the divisions of the Near East between Britain and France post World War I. World War I was 1918, so this would happen after that. It came to an end in 1918. The darker areas denote the areas the British thought should be Palestinian, and the lighter ones Israeli. So you see the lighter ones and the darker ones up there. And then you see something called Transjordan here, which I find quite interesting. I really like Jordan, by the way. While I fully believe in anti-occupation and the need to create a political solution for both peoples with the utmost urgency, and within that pursuit, history is important. It does need to be clearer than this post. And if you don't believe in self-determination for both people, for example, that Israeli self-determination is entirely illegitimate, then there is a lot more relevant history than this map coupled with a caption you used. So this is something that a friend posted. I have seen this floating around a lot, and it strikes me as a quarter truth that really isn't getting any of us closer to a solution, and it's certainly not an aha moment. So the friend who posted this was more pro-Palestinian than pro-Israeli. And that's why I kind of just wanted to dig through all of these things too, because they've been floating around online, and there's more to it, obviously. So the Philistines lived in Canaan, which is basically Israel, during the Iron Age, which was 1175 BCE, before Christ. The Philistines originated as an immigrant group from the Aegean that settled there in 1175 BCE. So they're actually Greek. The Aegean Sea is part of what's now Greece, and Greece is the cradle of humanity. And the Middle East is like the womb of humanity. So you have all these different areas that kind of merge together because humanity was kind of created there, or the civilization was created there. Over time, the Philistines gradually assimilated elements of the local Levantine societies while preserving their own unique culture. And then they kind of conflicted. So the biblical conflict with the Israelites were the ones who were in Egypt. So first they were in Canaan, and then they came to Egypt, and then they were expelled from Egypt again. So there's a lot that goes into this area. I just want to read something else about the Philistines. At the very beginning of the 12th century BC, which people call Iron Age, the Sea People swept out of the Aegean to make their appearance in the archaeological record and in ancient literary references. The Philistines ultimately settled on and dominated some of the choicest lands in Canaan, the agriculturally rich coastal strip from Gaza in the south to Tel Kazil, near modern Tel Aviv. In the north, through which passed one of the world's most important international trade routes. So I think Jaffa used to be part of all this too. Jaffa is part of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, it's called Yaffo in Israeli Hebrew. Soon, the Philistines began exerting pressure on the Israelite tribes farther inland. This conflict prompted the Israelites to form a monarchy in the mid-11th century in order to meet the Philistine threat more effectively. After about 150 years of dominance in the area, the Philistines faded from the scene, overpowered by the Israelites under King David, and therefore played only a minor role in events until about 600 BC, when they disappeared altogether. But the name Palestine comes from this, okay? And so you talk about bloodlines and lineages and everything. This has to do with that. And so this entire story of David and Goliath, I think they say Goliath was a Philistine. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that's basically the main battle. So it could all be a symbology for one tribe against another too, by the way, if you take everything as a symbol that they're covering in the Bible. And obviously this is not coming from a religious standpoint. This is coming from a standpoint of they're giving us a script somehow. And this has a meaning up until our days as well, as you can tell. Now, another thing about the Philistines, which the name Palestine comes from, is they're actually saying the giant Goliath was a Philistine, so was Delilah, who entrapped legendary warrior Samson. They are regularly depicted as the enemy of the Israelites in biblical text. And also, thanks to their bad press, their name has become synonymous with crassness, ignorance, and hostility to culture. Now, the Philistines worshipped Beelzebub, which is a form of a devil. Yeah. So it's the Beelzebub is a deity worshipped by the Philistines in the city of Ekron. So Beelzebub, yes, I mean, Germans pronounce it Beelzebub. I don't know how English speakers pronounce it, but he is basically one of the 3 devils. So it's another name for Satan. He's known in demonology as one of the 7 deadly demons or 7 princes of hell. Beelzebub represents gluttony and envy. And so I found that very interesting. I'm not demonizing anyone here. This is more about the name, because I don't think whatever you have on this land right now, those are not necessarily the original bloodlines anymore. I think the Israelites that were there before, and also what you had around Jesus' times, which yes, absolutely Jesus existed, just differently than people think they did. I think what you had then, those were more like the Assyrian Jews, meaning you would go to Syria, Lebanon nowadays, and you would find that closer there. There's literally a village in Syria that still speaks the same language that Jesus and the tribes before him spoke. So what you see right now has to do more with Ashkenazi Jews or Jews that like from all over, honestly. It's not the same that was there 2,000 years ago. And I think it's similar to the Palestinians. It's not necessarily the original Philistines that were there at all. But because the land carries an energy, it's always going to carry this energy of conflict. Let's put it that way. Because that's just what it knows for thousands and thousands of years. And so this conflict is going to be carried out over and over and over again. And especially nowadays where you have so many other things involved, where you have, politicians involved, where you have an AI involved. And this is basically the Holy Land, like everything here, like Jordan, Egypt, parts of it, like this is all biblical land that you're talking about. And you can definitely feel it when you're on this land. So anyhow, just wanted to offer this perspective to you guys. Got a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. And I think you just need to see things from different angles and standpoints and viewpoints and why things are occurring the way they are occurring. I personally have to say, for me, I mean, the way it happened, yes, it kind of came out of the blue. But that whatever's happening right now is happening. It's not really coming out of the blue because you could feel it. When I was there in February, you could feel something's going to happen. And I know a lot of people who were in that area, who were in Israel like last month, and they were saying you could feel something big was coming. Like there's no way you can ignore the intuition beforehand, the signs that are coming. But what exactly is coming, no one knows. What I also want to say, maybe I'm going to close it out with this, is I find it a bit hard to believe that the Israeli military did not, I mean, they say they didn't do anything for 6-7 hours. I find it very hard to believe that they wouldn't know about this attack, because when I was there, they were all over. They were extremely strict. So I find it hard to believe that an attack like this can even happen and they don't know about it. Let's put it that way. When I was entering Israel, I entered 2 times, once by air when I was coming from Morocco, no issues, and then once by land when I was coming from Jordan again. And I was actually questioned quite a bit because I had both the Morocco and Jordan stamp. in my passport when I was entering from Jordan. And I was kind of sour after that experience because they were extremely rude to me. They even said something like, "Oh, if you don't like this, just tell your president," or something like they said something very rude and inappropriate, to be honest with you. And this is coming from the Israeli border control. And I was like, well, this is kind of how you incite wars, by the way. So I just kept it to myself. But I also know this Mexican couple who were questioned for 3 hours straight when entering through Tel Aviv. And this Mexican couple was just on a honeymoon. They were traveling for like 6 weeks straight. They were going to three different Middle Eastern countries and then somewhere in Thailand and Asia. So it was like kind of like a world trip for them. They had saved up a lot for that. And they were literally questioned for hours and hours and hours. You also hear other things of like some people being flat out deported, you know? So they were very, very strict, is my point. And they were all over this country, you know, everywhere. Like we were taking a bus from Tel Aviv down to the Red Sea. Our bus got stopped twice by military, you know, like a tour bus. Like I just can't believe that this military did not know about the attack. And so there's something else with all of this going on, obviously, which if you've been following some Truther channels and you know those theories, the easiest passport to enter any of these countries, by the way, is Canada. Every single Canadian I knew went through straight without questioning, without anything. For those of you who think a passport does not matter, it does, especially in countries like that. So just want to put that out there too. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Hope you guys are doing okay. And also, you know, I do think very strongly it matters. Like, I do think we can direct situations in certain ways with our intention. They don't want us to know our strength and power. You know, whoever's powering this matrix reality, whoever's controlling all this influx of energy and influx of fear and all of that they want us to fear. With our mind, we can change any situation by envisioning a different outcome. Instead, they'd want to keep us in a loop indefinitely. They want us to be fighting each other, to be at this spiritual war with each other. Please consider this also when you're considering conflicts like this, when you're considering anything like this. Also, what's happening in Ukraine and other parts of the world. Like there were earthquakes in Afghanistan, there were other things going on. We are way more powerful than they want us to know and acknowledge. And if you really want to be productive, you know, instead of becoming upset at different opinions of others or kind of attacking each other for different belief systems, try to envision an outcome that you want. And if collectively everyone does it, we would probably be at a different place, or we probably will be at a different place. So I'm not saying, oh, just envision love and light and whatever. No, like legit take your mind control and your mind power, control your mind, control your own mind. Because right now your mind is being controlled by something or someone else if you're all agitated about this. Use your full mind power. Your mind is a powerful tool. And use it to envision a different outcome to any situation that you're in right now, also collectively, a world situation. Okay, hope this helps. Thank you so much for your support. If you're new to this channel, subscribe, and new videos to come. Until then, have a good one.